Get out of my sanctuary. Get out. My voice came out steady, quiet, but it cut through the room like the wind that rattled the cabin windows. The echo spread across the wood-paneled walls, mixing with the sound of rain hammering against the glass. My brother-in-law Brad stood in front of the fireplace, fire crackling behind him. Glass of whiskey in his hand, like he owned the place. "You're overreacting," he said. My sister Melissa gave a half-smile, scrolling through her phone. Didn't even look up. Dad stared at the floor. Mom's eyes were red. Her hands trembled in her lap. I didn't raise my voice. Just set my briefcase on the coffee table and said what I'd driven 7 hours to say. "You think you've taken everything. But what comes next isn't anger. It's justice." Brad laughed, set down his whiskey. "Justice, Simone, come on, we're family." I opened the briefcase, pulled out the first document, set it on the table between us. "Then let me show you what family really means." 3 months earlier, I'd stood in this exact spot holding a different envelope. Keys, 2 small brass keys on a leather keychain. My hands were shaking when I handed them to my father. "Dad," I said, "this is yours." He stared at the keys like they were something he didn't recognize, like they couldn't possibly be real. "Simone, what?" "The cabin, it's yours. Yours and Mom's. I put it in a trust. You're the lifetime beneficiaries. No mortgage. No landlord. No more rent. Just ... yours." My mother covered her mouth, started crying before I could finish the sentence. Dad took the keys. His hands were shaking worse than mine. He was 67 years old, a factory worker for 43 years before he retired. And he'd never, not once in his entire life, held keys to a home that belonged to him. "I don't understand," he whispered. "There's nothing to understand. You raised me. You sacrificed everything so I could go to college, become an engineer, have a career. This is me saying thank you. This is your retirement, your sanctuary. No more struggling, no more worrying, just peace." He looked at Mom. Mom looked at him. And then my father, a man I'd seen cry exactly twice in my life. Once at his own mother's funeral, and once the day I graduated college, broke down sobbing. He hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. And he said, through tears, the words I'll never forget. "This feels like freedom." Let me back up. My name is Simone Wright. I'm 38 years old. I've been a civil engineer in Chicago for the past 10 years. Skyscrapers, bridges, infrastructure projects, the kind of work that pays well but demands everything you've got. I'm single, never married, never had kids. Just poured everything into my career and saving money because I had a goal. The goal was this: give my parents something they'd never had: security. My parents, George and Barbara Wright, spent their entire lives paycheck to paycheck. Dad worked in a textile factory in Tennessee. Mom was a cashier at the local grocery store. They never owned a home, never had savings, just scraped by, month after month, year after year. They rented the same small apartment for 30 years. 2 bedrooms, thin walls. A landlord who raised the rent every year and never fixed anything, but they never complained, not once. Because that's who they were. Quiet, hardworking, grateful for what they had. They put everything into raising me and my younger sister, Melissa. Made sure we had what we needed even when they didn't. Drove used cars so we could take school field trips. Skipped meals so we could have new clothes for the first day of school. Melissa never noticed, but I did. So when I finally had enough saved $200,000 after a decade of 60-hour weeks and living in a studio apartment barely bigger than a closet, I knew exactly what I wanted to do with it. I bought them a home. The cabin was in the Smoky Mountains, just outside Gatlinburg, Tennessee. About 40 minutes from where my parents had lived their whole lives, but worlds away in every other sense. It wasn't huge. 2 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, maybe 1,200 square feet. But it had high ceilings with exposed beams, a stone fireplace, and a deck that overlooked the mountains. The previous owners had let it fall into disrepair. The roof leaked, the windows were drafty, the kitchen was stuck in 1987. Perfect. I spent $30,000 renovating it. New roof, new windows with energy-efficient glass, updated kitchen with modern appliances, fresh paint, new furniture. I even had the deck rebuilt and stained. When I was done, it looked like something from a magazine. Wood interior, warm lighting, the kind of place where you could sit with a cup of coffee and watch the sunrise over the mountains and forget that the world outside existed. I put it in an irrevocable trust with my parents as the lifetime beneficiaries. That meant it belonged to them for as long as they lived. No one could take it. No one could force them out. It was theirs. Legally, permanently, protected. I drove down from Chicago on a Friday in early September. Told my parents I wanted to take them on a weekend trip to the mountains. They thought it was just a vacation. When we pulled up to the cabin, Mom looked confused. "Where are we?" "Your new home," I said. I handed Dad the keys. He didn't understand at first. Thought maybe I'd rented it for the weekend. But when I explained when I showed him the trust documents, the deed, the renovations I'd made, he just stood there in the driveway, staring at the cabin like it might disappear if he looked away. "You did this for us," Mom whispered. "You earned it, 1,000 times over." We spent that weekend moving their things in. Not that they had much, a few pieces of furniture, boxes of photos and keepsakes, clothes, books. But watching them watching Dad hang pictures on the walls, and Mom arranged her books on the new shelves, I realized something. They weren't just moving into a house, they were moving into a life they'd never thought they'd have. Saturday night, we sat on the deck with blankets wrapped around us, drinking hot cider, watching the stars. "I never thought I'd have this," Dad said quietly. "A place that's mine, that no one can take away. No one can take it." I promised him, "It's yours. Forever." Mom squeezed my hand. "Thank you, sweetheart. I don't know how we got so lucky." "I'm the lucky one," I said. "I got you too." That night, lying in the guest bedroom, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace, complete, unshakable peace. I'd broken the cycle. The cycle of struggling, of barely making it, of never having enough. My parents would spend the rest of their lives in comfort, in security, in the home they deserved. I thought that was the end of the story. I was wrong. 2 weeks later, I was back in Chicago, working on a project downtown, when my phone buzzed with a notification. Instagram. My sister Melissa had posted something and tagged me. I opened it. The photo was of Melissa and Brad, her husband, standing on the deck of the cabin. Sunset behind them, both of them smiling. Melissa's arm around Brad's waist, his arm over her shoulder. The caption said, "Our new family mountain home." Above the clouds, I stared at my phone. Our home. I scrolled through the comments. Friends congratulating them, asking where it was, saying it looked amazing. Someone asked, "Can we come visit?" Brad had responded, "DM me, we might have availability. I called my mother immediately. "Mom, what's going on? Why is Melissa posting like the cabin belongs to her?" There was a long pause. Too long. "Oh honey, they're just visiting for a few days. A few days. The post says it's their home." I heard my dad's voice in the background. "Let me talk to her." The phone shuffled. Dad came on. "Simone." His voice was tired, defeated. "Melissa and Brad showed up last week, said they needed a place to stay. Their apartment lease ended and they between places. Melissa said it would just be temporary." "How temporary?" "She didn't say exactly." My stomach dropped. "Dad, where are you and Mom sleeping?" Another pause. "The smaller bedroom." "They took your room." Melissa said they needed more space. "For Emma's things, we didn't want to cause a problem." "I'm coming down there." "Simone, don't. It's fine. They're family. I'll be there Friday night." I hung up, stared at Melissa's Instagram post again, at the comments, at Brad's smug response about availability. And I knew, this wasn't a temporary visit. This wasn't Melissa needing help. This was a takeover. And I'd just given her the keys. Before I tell you what I found when I got to that cabin, if you've ever given everything to help your family only to watch someone else try to steal it, if you've ever seen your parents, manipulated by people they trusted. Please subscribe to this channel. These stories need to be heard. Now let me show you how quickly a gift can turn into a battlefield. I left Chicago Friday afternoon. Told my boss I had a family emergency. Threw some clothes in a bag. Got in my car and drove. 7 hours. That's how long it takes to get from Chicago to the Smoky Mountains. 7 hours of highway, then winding mountain roads, then the narrow driveway that led up to the cabin. I had a lot of time to think during that drive. About Melissa. About how we'd grown up in the same house, with the same parents, but turned out so completely different. Melissa was 3 years younger than me. The baby, the one everyone protected and coddled and made excuses for. She'd always been charming. Knew exactly how to smile and say the right things to get what she wanted. When we were kids, she'd borrow my things without asking and never return them. When we were teenagers, she'd take money from mom's purse and blame it on me. When we were adults, she'd ask to borrow money and never pay it back. But everyone always forgave her, because that's what you did with Melissa. You forgave her. You made excuses. You pretended her behavior was normal, because confronting it would be uncomfortable. I'd stopped lending her money 5 years ago. Stopped expecting her to change. Just kept my distance and focused on my own life. But this, taking over the cabin I'd bought for our parents, posting about it on social media like it belonged to her, that crossed a line I hadn't known existed. I pulled into the driveway just after 11 at night. Brad's truck was parked in the spot where Dad usually parked. The lights were on inside. Through the windows, I could see movement, hear music playing. I sat in my car for a moment, staring at the cabin, my cabin. The one I'd spent $210,000 on. The one I'd given to my parents so they could finally have peace. And my sister had moved in like it was hers. I got out of the car. Used my key I'd kept a spare, just in case, and opened the front door. The first thing I saw was Brad, sitting in Dad's recliner by the fireplace, beer in hand, watching a basketball game on the TV. He looked up when I walked in, surprised but not concerned. "Simone, hey, didn't know you were coming. Where are my parents?" "In bed, I think. It's late." I looked around. The living room was different. Toys scattered on the floor. Emma's backpack by the couch. A stack of mail on the coffee table, mail addressed to Brad and Melissa at this address. "Why is your mail coming here?" Brad shrugged. "We changed our address. Easier that way." "Changed your address? You live here. Temporarily. Till we find a place. Housing market is crazy right now, you know." I walked past him. Down the short hallway. The smaller bedroom door was closed. I knocked softly. "Mom, Dad," shuffling. The door opened. Mom stood there in her nightgown, looking exhausted. "Simone, what are you doing here? Can I come in?" She stepped aside. Dad was sitting on the edge of the bed in his pajamas. The room was cramped. Their things were boxed up in the corner. Like they were the guests. Like this was temporary. "Why are you sleeping in here?" I asked, even though I already knew. Mom looked at Dad. Dad looked at the floor. Melissa needed the bigger room. Mom said quietly, "For Emma's things, and Brad's office equipment. We don't mind. This room is fine. This room is half the size of the master bedroom. The master bedroom I specifically chose for you when I bought this place." "We know, honey. But they needed it more." "No, they didn't. This is your home. I gave it to you." "Not to Melissa." Dad finally looked up. "We didn't want to cause trouble. She's our daughter." She said they were desperate. "How long have they been here?" 3 weeks. 3 weeks. My parents had been sleeping in the smaller bedroom for 3 weeks while my sister took over their home. I walked out, went to the master bedroom, opened the door without knocking. Melissa was sitting up in bed, laptop open. She looked up, annoyed. "Simone, what are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing." "We're staying here for a bit. Mom and Dad said it was fine." "It's not fine. This is their home. It's the family cabin. It's their cabin. I bought it for them. Not for you." Melissa closed her laptop. "Why are you being like this? We needed a place to stay. Our lease ended. Rent in Nashville is insane. Mom and Dad have all this space, so you just moved in. Without asking me? Why would I ask you? They live here. They said yes. Because they feel guilty saying no to you. They always have. Melissa's face hardened. This isn't about you, Simone. Stop trying to control everything. I'm not controlling anything. I'm protecting our parents from being taken advantage of. Taken advantage of. We're helping them. We're keeping them company. Helping with bills. What bills? The cabin is paid off. The trust covers property taxes and utilities. What bills are you helping with? She didn't answer. I walked to the closet. Opened it. Saw Brad's clothes. Melissa's clothes. Suitcases, boxers labeled with their names. They hadn't just moved in temporarily. They'd moved in permanently. I turned back to Melissa. How long are you planning to stay? As long as we need to. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting. Now, if you don't mind, I'm trying to work on what? She hesitated. Just for a second, but I caught it. I walked over, looked at her laptop screen before she could close it. Airbnb. She was looking at the Airbnb app, at messages from guests, at a calendar with bookings marked in green. What is that? I asked, even though I knew. Nothing. I grabbed the laptop. She tried to stop me, but I was faster. Opened the browser history. Airbnb, VRBO, Booking.com. All 3 sites, all with listings for this cabin. The Airbnb listing called it Cozy Mountain Retreat Sleeps 6 Perfect Family Getaway. $250 per night. 8 bookings over the next 6 weeks. All confirmed. All paid. I stared at the screen. At the photos Brad had taken of the cabin. At the description he'd written. At the fake reviews from friends pretending to be guests. You're renting out Mom and Dad's home. It's not like that. Then what is it like? Explain it to me, Melissa. Explain how you moved into the home I bought for our parents and turned it into a rental property without telling anyone. We needed the money. Do you know how expensive it is to raise a kid? To pay off debt? We're barely making it, and you're up in Chicago making 6 figures. I worked for that money. I earned it. You don't get to take something I gave to our parents and profit off it. Brad appeared in the doorway. Everything okay in here? No, I said. Everything is not okay. You two are running an illegal rental operation out of my parents' home. Brad crossed his arms. It's not illegal. It's their house. They let us stay here. That means we can do what we want. Actually, it doesn't. The cabin is in a trust. My parents are the lifetime beneficiaries. That means they get to live here. It doesn't mean you get to move in and start a business. We're not starting a business. You have 8 bookings. You're making $2,000 a month renting this place to strangers while my parents sleep in the tiny bedroom. Your parents don't mind, of course. They mind, they're just too kind to say anything. They've spent their whole lives being pushed around and you're doing it again. Melissa stood up from the bed. You need to leave. You're causing drama. I'm causing drama. You stole their home. I didn't steal anything, they offered. No, you manipulated them. Like you always do. You showed up here with nowhere to go and made them feel guilty and moved in and took over. That's not offering. That's emotional blackmail. Get out, Melissa said. Her voice was shaking. Get out of my room. Your room. This is my parents' room. Get out. I looked at her. At Brad standing behind her with his arms crossed. At the laptop with the rental bookings still open on the bed. Fine, I said. I'll leave. But this isn't over. I walked out. Went back to the smaller bedroom. Mom and Dad were still sitting there, looking miserable. Did you know they were renting the cabin? I asked. Dad shook his head. We saw people coming and going. Cars in the driveway. But Melissa said they were friends visiting. We didn't know she was charging them. How much of the rental money have you seen? None, Mom whispered. We didn't know there was rental money. She's making $250 a night. 8 bookings, $2,000. And you haven't seen a penny. Mom started crying. Dad put his arm around her. What do we do? Dad asked. She's our daughter. We can't just kick her out. Yes, you can. This is your home. I gave it to you. Not to her. But she said if we made her leave, we'd never see Emma again. There it was. The threat, the manipulation. The thing Melissa always did when she didn't get her way. She'd use Emma, her own daughter, as leverage. She's bluffing, I said. What if she's not? Mom asked. What if we lose our granddaughter? Then she's not the person you thought she was. And Emma will find her way back to you when she's old enough to understand. Dad looked at me with tired eyes. What are you going to do? I'm going to fix this. But I need you to trust me. Can you do that? They both nodded. I pulled out my phone. Started taking pictures. The rental listings. The messages from guests. The calendar with bookings. Screenshots of everything. Then I walked through the cabin. Photographed the toys. The mail addressed to Brad and Melissa. The master bedroom full of their things. The smaller bedroom where my parents were sleeping. I documented everything because I'd learned something in my 10 years as an engineer. Before you fix a problem, you need to understand exactly what's broken. You need evidence, data, facts, and I had plenty now. I left the cabin around 1 in the morning, drove to a hotel in town. Lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about what I'd seen. My parents, uncomfortable in their own home, sleeping in the smaller bedroom, too scared to say anything because Melissa had threatened to cut off contact with Emma. My sister, treating the cabin like her personal investment property, renting it to strangers, keeping all the money, acting like she had every right to be there. And Brad, sitting in my father's chair, drinking beer, watching TV like he owned the place. I thought about confronting them again, yelling, demanding they leave. But that wouldn't work. Melissa didn't respond to yelling. She responded to consequences. So I started planning. Not revenge. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted my parents to have their home back. Their peace back. The retirement they deserved. And if Melissa and Brad wouldn't leave voluntarily, I'd make them leave. Legally. Carefully. Permanently. I fell asleep around 3. And when I woke up Saturday morning, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I spent Saturday morning in that hotel room with my laptop and a pot of coffee from the lobby. First I pulled up the trust documents. The ones my attorney had drafted when I bought the cabin. I'd read them before, obviously, but I needed to read them again with fresh eyes. With a specific purpose. The trust was irrevocable. That meant once it was created, it couldn't be changed or dissolved except under very specific circumstances. George and Barbara Wright were named as the lifetime beneficiaries. They had the right to live in the cabin for as long as they lived. When they both passed, the property would go to me. But here was the important part. Section 4. Subsection C. The property shall be used solely as a primary residence for the named beneficiaries. Commercial use, including but not limited to rental, lease or lodging services, is strictly prohibited without written consent of the trustee. I was the trustee. I hadn't given written consent, which meant Melissa and Brad were violating the terms of the trust, which meant I had legal grounds to remove them. I made notes, highlighted the relevant sections, then I started researching Tennessee rental laws. Short-term rentals, anything under 30 days required specific permits in most Tennessee counties. I pulled up the Sevier County regulations. The cabin was in an unincorporated area just outside Gatlinburg, which meant county rules applied. To legally operate a short-term rental, you needed a business license, a certificate of occupancy, proof of liability insurance, and approval from your HOA if you lived in one. I pulled up the HOA documents for the mountain community where the cabin was located, found the bylaw Section 7. Subsection 3. Short-term rentals of less than 30 days are prohibited in all residential properties within the community. Violations will result in fines of $1,000 per day until compliance is achieved. $1,000 per day. I did the math. If Melissa had been renting the cabin for 3 weeks 21 days, that was $21,000 in fines. I kept reading. Found the contact information for the HOA president, a woman named Mrs. Sullivan. Then I researched Airbnb's terms of service. Found the section about fraudulent listings. Properties must be listed by the legal owner or with explicit permission from the legal owner. Listings that violate this policy will be removed, and the host account may be permanently suspended. I had everything I needed. I opened a new document on my laptop, started creating a timeline, a strategy, a step-by-step plan to remove Melissa and Brad from the cabin, legally and permanently. Step 1. Contact the attorney who drafted the trust. Get a legal opinion. Prepare an injunction if necessary. Step 2. Report the violations to the HOA. Provide evidence. Request enforcement. Step 3. Report the listings to Airbnb, VRBO, and Booking.com as fraudulent. Provide proof of ownership. Step 4. Change the locks. Remove their access. Step 5. If they refuse to leave, involve law enforcement, trespassing, illegal occupancy. Whatever it took, I spent 2 hours refining the plan, making sure every step was legal, making sure I had documentation for everything. Then I started making calls. The first call was to Marcus Freeman, the attorney who'd set up the trust. His office was in Knoxville, about an hour from where I was. I'd worked with him 3 months ago, and he'd been thorough, professional, exactly the kind of person I needed now. His secretary answered. I explained who I was and why I was calling. She put me through. Simone, Marcus said. Good to hear from you. How are your parents enjoying the cabin? That's actually why I'm calling. We have a problem. I explained the situation. Melissa moving in. The rental listings, the fact that my parents had been displaced from their own master bedroom, the money Melissa was keeping. Marcus was quiet for a moment when I finished. That's a clear violation of the trust terms, he said. Your sister has no legal right to occupy the property, let alone rent it to third parties. Can we remove her? Absolutely. I can file for an injunction on Monday. We'll have a hearing within a week. The judge will order her to vacate immediately. What if she refuses? Then it becomes a law enforcement matter. But Simone, I have to warn you, this is going to damage your relationship with your sister. She damaged it when she stole from our parents. Fair enough. I'll start the paperwork Monday morning. In the meantime, document everything. Photos, screenshots, witness statements, if possible. The more evidence we have, the stronger our case. Already done. Good, I'll call you Monday with an update. We hung up. I felt something loosen in my chest. Relief maybe, or just the satisfaction of having a plan that would actually work. Next call. The HOA. I found Mrs. Sullivan's number in the community directory, called it. She answered on the third ring. Sullivan Residence, Mrs. Sullivan. My name is Simone Wright. I own property in your community. Cabin 47B. Oh yes, I know that property. Is there a problem? I'm calling to report a violation. My sister has been operating an illegal short-term rental at the cabin. I have evidence listings on Airbnb and other platforms. Multiple bookings. She's been doing it for at least 3 weeks. There was a pause. Then Mrs. Sullivan's voice turned cold. We've had complaints. Cars coming and going at odd hours. Noise. People who clearly weren't residents using the community amenities. I was planning to send someone to investigate this week. I can send you evidence right now if that helps. Please do. Email it to the address on our website. And Ms. Wright, thank you for reporting this. We take our community standards very seriously. Violations of the rental ban will result in immediate fines. How much? $1,000 per day until compliance is achieved. And if the violation continues for more than 30 days, we can place a lien on the property. I'll send you everything I have. I'll expect it within the hour. We'll send a formal cease and desist letter by Monday morning. I thanked her and hung up. Then I opened my email and started attaching files. Screenshots of the Airbnb listing, the VRBO listing, the Booking.com listing, photos of the rental calendar showing 8 confirmed bookings, messages between Brad and potential guests. I sent it all to Mrs. Sullivan. Subject line, illegal rental violation, cabin for 7B. Evidence attached. Then I moved on to step 3. I opened Airbnb, found the listing for the cabin, clicked report a problem, selected fraudulent listing, Posted without owner permission. Typed out a message. This property is listed without authorization from the legal owner. I am the trustee of the property and did not give permission for any rental activity. Attached is proof of ownership and trust documentation. Please remove this listing immediately. Attached the trust documents. The deed, my ID, submitted the report. Did the same thing with VRBO, with Booking.com. 3 separate reports, all with the same evidence. I sat back, looked at the clock. It was barely noon, and I'd already set 3 major dominoes in motion. Attorney filing for injunction, HOA, preparing fines and cease and desist, rental platforms investigating fraud reports. Now I just needed to wait. I checked out of the hotel. Drove back to the cabin. Parked down the road where my car wouldn't be visible. Watched for an hour. Brad left around 2. Drove off in his truck. Probably going to town for something. Melissa was still there. I could see her through the window, on her phone. My parents were on the deck. Dad was reading. Mom was knitting. They looked tense. Uncomfortable. I wanted to go to them. Tell them what I was doing. But I couldn't. Not yet. Not until everything was in place. I drove back to town. Found a locksmith. Small local place called Hernandez Lock and Key. A man in his 40s was behind the counter. Name tag said Joe. Can I help you? I need locks changed. All the locks on a cabin. 3 doors front back, and deck access. When tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., I can do that. What's the address? I gave it to him. He wrote it down. Any particular reason for the rush? Family issue. Some people are staying there who shouldn't be. He nodded. Didn't ask for details. I'll be there at 9, thank you. I paid him a deposit, left with a receipt, and the knowledge that by tomorrow afternoon, Melissa and Brad wouldn't be able to get into the cabin even if they wanted to. I went back to the hotel. Got another room for the night. Ordered takeout and ate it while monitoring my email. Around 5 p.m., I got a notification from Airbnb. Your report has been reviewed. The listing in question has been removed for violation of our terms of service. The host has been notified and their account is under review. I smiled. 20 minutes later, VRBO sent a similar email. An hour after that, Booking.com did the same. All 3 listings gone. I imagined Melissa checking her phone, seeing the notifications, realizing all her bookings had just disappeared. The panic that would set in when she realized she couldn't contact the guests, couldn't explain, couldn't salvage it. My phone rang at 7 p.m. Melissa. I let it go to voicemail. She called again, and again. 4 times in 10 minutes. Finally, I answered. What did you do? Her voice was shaking, furious. Our listings are gone. All of them. We have 8 bookings and they're all canceled. Good. Simone, we need that money. Those bookings were $2,000. You shouldn't have been renting a property you don't own. Mom and Dad let us stay here. That means we can do what we want. No, it doesn't. The cabin is in a trust. I'm the trustee. Rental activity is prohibited. You violated the trust terms. You violated HOA rules. And you committed fraud by listing a property without the owner's permission. You can't do this. I already did. The listings are gone. The HOA is sending a cease and desist letter. They're fining you $1,000 a day until you stop. And my attorney is filing for an injunction to have you removed from the property. Silence. You're bluffing. I'm not. You'll see the paperwork Monday. But Melissa, you don't have to wait for the courts. You can leave now. Pack your things and go. Save yourself the embarrassment. This is our home. It's not. It never was. It's Mom and Dad's home. I gave it to them. You stole it. I didn't steal anything. Then what do you call moving in without permission, taking their bedroom, and renting their home to strangers while keeping all the money? What would you call that? She didn't answer. You have until tomorrow, I said. Pack your things. Leave voluntarily, or I'll make you leave. Your choice. I hung up. 10 minutes later, Brad called. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. I listened to it. His voice was trying to sound threatening but mostly just sounded desperate. Simone, you're making a big mistake. We have rights. Tenant rights. You can't just kick us out. We'll sue. We'll take you to court. We'll make this ugly. I texted him back. You're not tenants. You never signed a lease. You never paid rent. You're squatters. And in Tennessee, squatters can be removed with law enforcement assistance. Try me. He didn't respond. I spent the rest of the evening organizing documents, printing copies, creating a folder with everything I'd need for tomorrow. Trust documents, deed, HOA bylaws, rental platform screenshots, confirmation emails from Airbnb, VRBO, and Booking.com showing the listings had been removed for fraud. The locksmith receipt, Marcus Freeman's contact information, Mrs. Sullivan's contact information. Everything I needed to prove that Melissa and Brad had no right to be there. Around midnight, I called my parents. Dad answered. Simone, Dad, how are you? Tired. Melissa has been upset all evening, yelling on the phone, packing things. I think she knows you're doing something. I am. Tomorrow morning, I'm coming back to the cabin. I'm changing the locks. Melissa and Brad need to leave. She said we'll never see Emma again if we let you do this. She's using Emma as a weapon, Dad. That's not love. That's manipulation. I know. But she's still our daughter. And I'm your daughter too. And I'm trying to protect you. Do you trust me? A long pause. Yes. Then let me handle this. Tomorrow morning 9 a.m. Be ready. Okay. We hung up. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about what was coming. The confrontation, the anger, the accusations. Melissa would cry. She'd yell. She'd say I was destroying the family. Brad would threaten. He'd posture. He'd act like he had some kind of authority. But neither of them had any legal ground to stand on. And tomorrow, they'd find that out. I fell asleep around 2. Slept better than I had in days. When I woke up Sunday morning, I felt calm, ready. I packed my things. Checked out of the hotel. Loaded everything into my car. Then I drove to the cabin. It was 8:45 when I pulled into the driveway. The locksmith's van pulled in right behind me at 8:58. Joe got out. Tool bag in hand. Ready? He asked. Ready. We walked to the front door together. I used my key one last time, and then I went inside to end this. I opened the front door and walked in. Joe followed behind me, tool bag in one hand. The cabin was quiet, too quiet for a Sunday morning. Then I heard voices from the kitchen. The smell of coffee, bacon, cooking. I walked toward the sound. Joe stayed in the living room, setting down his bag near the door. Brad was at the stove, flipping bacon. Melissa sat at the kitchen table with her laptop and a cup of coffee. Emma was in the living room watching cartoons. They both looked up when I came in. You're here early, Melissa said. Her voice was flat, cold. We need to talk. We already talked. Nothing's changed. I walked past them into the living room. Set my briefcase on the coffee table. Opened it. Brad left the bacon and followed me. Melissa came too, arms crossed. What is this? Brad asked. Sit down. I don't sit down. Something in my voice made him listen. He sat on the couch. Melissa sat next to him. I pulled out the first document, set it on the coffee table between us. This is the trust document for this property. George and Barbara Wright are the named lifetime beneficiaries. That means they have the legal right to live here for as long as they live. No one else. Brad leaned forward, picked up the document, started reading. I pulled out the second document. This is Section 4, subsection C of the trust. It states that commercial use of the property is strictly prohibited. That includes rental, lease, or lodging services. Without written consent from the trustee, I looked at Melissa. I'm the trustee. I didn't give consent. She didn't say anything. Third document. This is the HOA bylaws for this community. Section 7, subsection 3. Short-term rentals of less than 30 days are prohibited. Violations result in fines of $1,000 per day. Brad set down the trust document. So you've been operating an illegal rental for 3 weeks? That's $21,000 in fines? That's ridiculous. I pulled out the fourth set of documents. Screenshots. These are your listings. Airbnb, VRBO, Booking.com, 8 confirmed bookings, $250 per night. You are making $2,000 a month renting a property you don't own. Melissa stood up. Those are gone now. Thanks to you. They're gone because they were fraudulent. You listed a property without the owner's permission. That violates every platform's terms of service. I pulled out more papers. Emails. These are confirmations from all 3 platforms. Your listings were removed. Your accounts are under review. You're banned from listing any properties with them again. Brad's face was getting red. You had no right. I had every right. This is my parents' home, not yours. I pulled out the next document. This is a cease and desist letter from the HOA. It was sent Friday. You should receive it tomorrow. It orders you to stop all rental activity immediately. Fines start today. $1,000 per day until you comply. Melissa sat back down. We already stopped. The listings are gone. That's not enough. The HOA wants you out. They consider you a liability. We're not leaving. I pulled out the final document. This is a notice of injunction. My attorney filed it Thursday. There's a hearing scheduled for Tuesday. The judge will order you to vacate the property immediately. But you don't have to wait for that. You can leave now. Brad stood up. This is bullshit. You can't just kick us out. We live here. We have rights. Tenant rights. You're not tenants. You never signed a lease. You never paid rent. You're squatters. We've been here 3 weeks, which doesn't give you any legal standing in Tennessee. Squatters can be removed with law enforcement assistance. Would you like me to call them? He opened his mouth, closed it. I looked at Melissa. You moved into our parents' home without permission. You took their bedroom. You turned their sanctuary into a business. You kept all the money. You manipulated them by threatening to keep Emma away if they said no. You exploited them. I didn't. Yes, you did. And it ends today. A knock at the door. Joe stuck his head in. Ready when you are. Melissa's eyes went wide. Who is that? Locksmith. He's changing all the locks. Front door. Back door. Deck door. When he's done, only Mom and Dad will have keys. You can't do that. I can. And I am. Brad stepped toward me. Not threatening, exactly, but trying to intimidate. You're making a huge mistake. We'll fight this. We'll sue. You'll lose. Everything I've shown you is legal. Everything I'm doing is within my rights as trustee. You have no case. And if you try to fight this, you'll just rack up attorney fees you can't afford. He stared at me. I didn't look away. Behind us, I heard movement. My father came out of the smaller bedroom, still in his pajamas. He looked at the documents spread across the coffee table. At Melissa and Brad, at me. Then he spoke. His voice was quiet but steady. Melissa, Brad, you need to leave. Melissa turned. Dad, no, Simone is right. This is our home. She gave it to us. You came here saying you needed help for a few days. It's been 3 weeks. You took our bedroom. You're renting our house. You made us feel like we were the guests. We were helping, you weren't helping. You were using us. Just like you always do. My mother came out of the bedroom behind him. Her eyes were red but her voice was firm. We love you, Melissa. We always will, but we can't let you do this anymore. We can't let you walk all over us and pretend it's love. Melissa's face crumpled. I can't believe this. You're choosing her over me. We're not choosing anyone, Dad said. We're choosing to keep our home. The first home we've ever owned. And if you can't respect that, then you can't stay here. Melissa stood up. Fine. You want us gone. We'll go. But don't expect to see Emma again. Don't expect birthday cards or holiday visits. You're choosing Simone's rules over your own granddaughter. My mother's voice shook, but she didn't back down. If that's your choice, we'll live with it. But this is our home, and you need to leave. Brad grabbed his phone off the table. This is illegal. I'm calling the cops. Please do, I said. I have the sheriff's non-emergency number right here. I'll explain that you're squatting in my parents' home, that you ran an illegal rental business, that you're violating HOA rules, and that you're refusing to leave. See how that conversation goes? He didn't call. I looked at my watch. It's 9:15. I'm giving you 30 minutes to pack your things and get out. At 9:45, Joe starts changing the locks. If you're still here, I call law enforcement. Your choice. Melissa looked at Dad one more time. You're really going to let her do this? Yes. She grabbed her laptop, walked to the master bedroom. I could hear her throwing things into suitcases. Angry, loud, making sure we all knew she was upset. Brad followed her. Less dramatic but just as angry. Emma came over from where she'd been watching TV. She looked confused, scared. Mommy's mad, she said quietly. My mother knelt down, hugged her. Everything's okay, sweetheart. Are we leaving? You and Mommy and Daddy are leaving. But you can come visit Grandma and Grandpa anytime you want. Okay, promise, promise. Emma hugged her back. I like it here. I know, baby. We like having you here. For the next 20 minutes, the cabin was chaos. Melissa and Brad hauling suitcases and boxers out to the truck. Melissa crying. Brad muttering under his breath about lawyers and lawsuits, and how we'd regret this. I sat on the couch and watched, didn't help, didn't speak, just made sure they didn't take anything that belonged to my parents. At 9:40, Brad carried out the last box. Melissa came down the hallway one more time. Her makeup was smeared, her eyes were red. She stopped in front of me. You did this, she said. You destroyed this family. No, you did. When you took something that wasn't yours and pretended it was love. I needed help. I came to my family for help and you threw me out. You didn't ask for help. You took over. There's a difference. She looked at Dad, at Mom. This is your choice. You're really okay with this? Dad met her eyes. Go, Melissa. She laughed, sharp and bitter. Fine. But when you're sitting here alone, when you need something and no one comes, remember this moment. Remember that you chose a piece of property over your own daughter. She walked out, slammed the door. Brad followed. Didn't say anything. Just gave me a look that was probably supposed to be threatening, and left. I watched through the window as they loaded Emma into the truck. Melissa was still crying. Brad was on his phone. Emma waved at the house. Mom waved back, tears streaming down her face. The truck pulled away. Gravel crunching under the tires, and then they were gone. The cabin was silent. Joe came in from where he'd been waiting on the deck. Okay to start. Yes, please. He went to work on the front door. I could hear the drill. The sound of the old lock coming out. My father sat down in his recliner, the one Brad had been sitting in. He stared at the fireplace. Did I do the right thing? He asked quietly. Yes, she's going to keep Emma from us. Maybe, for a while, but Emma will grow up. She'll understand eventually. Mom sat down next to him. Took his hand. We have our home back. We do. Thanks to Simone. Dad looked at me. Thank you, for fighting for us, always. Joe finished the front door. Moved to the back door. Then the deck door. By 10:30, all 3 locks were changed. He handed my father a small bag with 2 sets of keys. You're all set. New boats, no one gets in without your permission. Dad shook his hand. Thank you. After Joe left, we sat there for a while, the 3 of us, not talking, just being. The cabin felt different, bigger somehow, like it could breathe again. Mom got up, went to the master bedroom. Came back with a small smile. I'm moving our things back. Dad stood. I'll help. I watched them carry their boxers from the smaller bedroom back to the master. Watched them unpack their clothes into the closet that Melissa had taken over. Watched them put their photos back on the dresser. They moved slowly, carefully, like they were afraid someone might come back and take it away again. But no one was coming back. The locks were changed. The rental listings were gone. The HOA knew what had happened. My attorney had filed the injunction. It was over. That afternoon, I made lunch. We ate on the deck. Turkey sandwiches and chips, nothing fancy. Dad looked out at the mountains. It's quiet. It is. I forgot what quiet felt like. Mom reached over and squeezed his hand. We can get used to it again. My phone buzzed, a text from Melissa. I hope you're happy. You got what you wanted. We're homeless and you destroyed our family. I showed it to Dad. What are you going to say? Nothing. There's nothing to say. I deleted the message, put my phone away. We sat there until the sun started to set, orange and pink spreading across the sky, the mountains dark against the light. And for the first time in 3 weeks, my parents looked peaceful. I stayed with my parents for the first week. Told my boss I was working remotely. Set up my laptop at the kitchen table and worked from there, while my parents settled back into their home. The first day was strange, all of us moving carefully, like we were afraid to disturb something fragile. But by the second day, things started to shift. Mom went into the master bedroom and started unpacking the boxes Melissa had stacked in the corner. The boxes with her knitting supplies, her books, the photo albums she'd been told took up too much space. Dad spent the morning on the deck with his coffee, just sitting there, watching the sunrise, not checking over his shoulder, not waiting for someone to tell him he was in the way. I forgot what this felt like, he said when I joined him. What? Peace. Just sitting here, not worried about who's going to show up, what's going to happen next. Just peace. I sat with him and we watched the mountains wake up. The messages started that afternoon. First from Melissa. You destroyed everything. I hope you can live with yourself. Then another. Mom and Dad will regret this. They're going to be alone and miserable and it's your fault. Then another. We have nowhere to go. We're staying with Brad's brother and he hates us. Emma is sleeping on a couch. You did this. I didn't respond. Just archived the messages and kept working. Brad sent messages too. Longer ones. Angrier ones. You had no right to do what you did. We're getting a lawyer. We're going to sue for wrongful eviction and emotional distress. You'll hear from our attorney by the end of the week. I forwarded that one to Marcus Freeman. He called me an hour later. Empty threats, he said. They have no case. Ignore him. That's what I figured. The hearing is Tuesday. They probably won't show up. But if they do, we're ready. They didn't show up. Tuesday morning, Marcus and I sat in the courtroom. The judge reviewed the documents. The trust, the HOA bylaws, the evidence of illegal rental activity, the cease and desist letter. He looked up. Where are the defendants? They chose not to appear, Your Honor, Marcus said. The judge made a note. This is straightforward. The trust clearly names George and Barbara Wright as the sole beneficiaries with lifetime use of the property. The defendants had no legal right to occupy or commercialize the property. Injunction granted. The defendants are prohibited from entering or contacting the property. HOA fines are upheld. He signed the order, handed it to the clerk, and that was it. Outside the courthouse, Marcus shook my hand. It's done. It's official. Your parents' home is protected. I texted Dad from the parking lot. It's over. The judge ruled in our favor. The cabin is safe. He replied 30 seconds later. Come home. Your mother made pot roast. I drove back that afternoon. Mom had the table set. Pot roast with potatoes and carrots. Homemade rolls. Apple pie for dessert. We ate slowly. Talked about small things. The weather. The neighbors. The garden Mom wanted to plant in the spring. Normal things. Peaceful things. That night, before I drove back to Chicago, Dad walked me to my car. Thank you, he said. For fighting for us. For not letting her take this. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. You gave us this place. And when someone tried to steal it, you protected it. That means everything. I hugged him. Drove back to Chicago with the windows down and the radio on. For the first time in weeks, I felt light. The next month was quiet. I went back to my normal routine. Work, gym, take out dinners in my apartment. But every few days, I'd get a text from Mom. Photos, mostly. Dad in the garden, holding a giant tomato he'd grown. The deck at sunrise, steam rising from a coffee mug in the foreground. Mom knitting by the fireplace, glasses on, completely focused. Both of them on a hiking trail, holding hands. She never wrote much, just sent the photos with a short caption. Your father is very proud of his tomatoes. First frost this morning, beautiful. We walked 2 miles today, but I knew what she was really saying. We're okay, we're happy, thank you. 2 months after the eviction, my phone buzzed at midnight on a Thursday. Unknown number. Text message: Aunt Simone. It's Emma. Mom took my phone, but I'm using Dad's old one. Can I still visit Grandma and Grandpa? I sat up in bed, typed back immediately. Emma, of course you can. They miss you so much. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Mom says they don't want to see me anymore. That they hate us because of what we did. My chest tightened. That's not true, sweetheart. Your grandparents love you. They always will. You're welcome at the cabin any time. Can I come next weekend? Let me talk to your mom. I called Melissa. It rang 4 times before she answered. What? Emma wants to visit Mom and Dad. Absolutely not. She's your daughter, Melissa, not a weapon. She'll get over it. Kids are resilient. She shouldn't have to get over losing her grandparents because you're angry at me. Maybe. You should have thought about that before you kicked us out. I didn't kick you out. I removed you from a home you were exploiting. Emma is innocent in this. She deserves to see her grandparents. Over my dead body. She hung up. I texted Emma back. Your mom said no for now. But I promise you, when you're old enough to decide for yourself, you can visit whenever you want, and I'll make sure your grandparents know you're thinking about them. She sent back a heart emoji. I called Mom the next morning, told her about Emma's text. She cried, my sweet girl. She thinks we don't want to see her. I know, but Emma's smart. She'll figure it out when she's older. Will she? Yes. Because you're going to write to her. Send her letters. Photos. Show her that you never stopped loving her. Even if Melissa won't let her visit now, Emma will have proof. Evidence. Something to hold on to. Mom was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I'll write to her today. That afternoon, she sent me a photo of an envelope addressed to Emma. Inside was a letter, 3 pages long, and a handful of photos, the cabin, the mountains, both grandparents smiling on the deck. We love you, and we're always here for you, Mom had written at the end. Whenever you're ready, you have a home with us. She mailed it the next day. 4 months after the eviction, I spent Thanksgiving with my parents. Just the 3 of us. Turkey and stuffing and mashed potatoes. Pumpkin pie. We ate on the deck even though it was cold. Bundled up in jackets and blankets. Watching the sun set over the mountains. Do you think she ever apologized? Mom asked. I knew she meant Melissa. I don't know, maybe. Part of me hopes she does. Part of me doesn't want to hear from her at all. Dad set down his fork. I love her, I always will, but I don't trust her. And I don't know if that'll ever change. That's okay, I said. Love doesn't require trust, it just requires boundaries. He nodded slowly. I'm still learning that. We all are. 6 months after the eviction, my phone rang at 2 in the morning. Melissa. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. What? She was crying, drunk, from the sound of it. I messed up. I know I messed up. Brad left me, took all our savings and left. I don't have anyone. I can't pay rent. I don't know what to do. Melissa, I just wanted what you had. The success, the money, the respect. I thought if I had the cabin, if I could make money off it, I'd finally be somebody. You were already somebody. You were our sister. I know I ruined it. I ruined everything. Can I come back? Just me. No, Brad. I promise I'll be different. I'll help Mom and Dad. I won't cause problems. Please. I sat there in the dark, phone pressed to my ear, listening to my sister fall apart, and I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction. Just tired. Melissa, you can't come back. Please, not because I hate you, but because you need to figure this out on your own. You're 35 years old. You can't keep running to other people to fix your problems. You need to fix them yourself. I don't know how. Then learn. Get a job. Get an apartment. Build a life. Be the person Emma deserves as a mother. But you can't do that by moving back into mom and dad's house and expecting them to save you. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I'm sorry. For everything. I know you don't believe me. It doesn't matter if I believe you. It matters if you change. We hung up. I lay back down, stared at the ceiling, wondered if she'd actually change or if this was just another manipulation. I guess I'd find out eventually. Spring came. 8 months after the eviction. I drove down for a weekend visit. The mountains were green, wildflowers blooming along the roads. When I pulled up to the cabin, I saw Mom in the garden. She'd planted tomatoes, peppers, herbs. Everything was thriving. Dad was on the deck, building a birdhouse. He'd made 3 already. They hung from the trees around the cabin, painted bright colors. I got out of the car and just stood there for a moment, watching them. Happy, peaceful, at home. Mom looked up, saw me, waved. We had lunch on the deck, sandwiches and lemonade. Dad told me about the birds he'd been watching. Mom talked about her knitting project. Emma called last week. Dad said, from a friend's phone. Says she's coming to visit this summer. She's 10 now. Old enough to take the bus on her own. I set down my sandwich. That's wonderful. Melissa will be furious. Mom said, let her. Emma deserves a relationship with you. And she's old enough to decide that for herself. I'm nervous, Mom admitted. What if she doesn't remember us? What if she's angry? She won't be. She sent you letters. Remember, she's been writing to you for months. She knows you love her. Mom smiled. She's a sweet girl. Just like her grandmother. That night, after dinner, I sat on the deck alone. The stars were out. The mountains were dark shapes against the sky. The air smelled like pine and the faint smoke from someone's fireplace down the road. I thought about the last 8 months. The fight, the documents, the confrontation, Melissa's anger, Brad's threats, the locks being changed, my parents moving back into their bedroom. All of it. Was it worth it? Absolutely. Had it destroyed the family? No, it had redefined it. Family wasn't about letting people take advantage of you. It wasn't about keeping peace at any cost. It wasn't about accepting abuse because you shared blood. Family was about respect, about boundaries, about protecting what mattered. And my parents mattered. This cabin mattered. The peace they'd finally found mattered. I heard the door open behind me. Dad came out with 2 mugs of coffee, handed me one, sat down. We didn't talk. Just sat there in the silence. The comfortable kind. The kind that comes when you don't need words. Inside, Mom was knitting by the fireplace. Outside, the wind moved through the pines. Above, the stars were bright and cold, and everything was exactly as it should be. The next morning, I packed my car. Dad and Mom walked me out. Thank you, Dad said. For everything. For this place. For fighting for us. For not giving up. I'd do it again. Mom hugged me. Drive safe. Come back soon. I will. I got in the car. Started the engine. Looked at them in the rearview mirror as I pulled away. Standing together on the deck. The cabin behind them. The mountains beyond. My phone buzzed. Text from Emma. Counting down the days until summer. Love you, Aunt Simone. I smiled. Some battles were worth fighting. Some sanctuaries were worth protecting. Some silences were worth preserving. And some people were worth everything. If this story touched you, if you've ever had to set boundaries with family members who took advantage of you, if you've ever had to fight to protect people you love from exploitation, please like this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Comment below with your own story. These conversations matter. Remember that love without respect is not love. It's just obligation, and you don't owe anyone your peace, your security, or your home just because you share blood. Family should build you up, not tear you down. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is say no. Thank you for listening to my story. The road wound down the mountain. The cabin disappeared behind the trees. And I drove back to Chicago with the windows down and the certainty that I'd done exactly what needed to be done. My parents had their sanctuary, their peace, their home, and no one was going to take that from them again.